Source of long ago remedies, witch hazel's zigzag limbs reach under and through the branches of larger trees. They beckon like a bent finger wag, but it's hard to see the hillside place from which their shrub-like trunks emerge. Golden petals capture my attention, twisted threads spangling twigs. A last few ochre leaves where tiny witch hat galls. It's magic, a tree that blossoms for All Hallows Eve as other plants fade. If I plundered leaves and bark, boiled, pressed, steamed, could I make a tonic strong enough to keep evil from our doors? Could anything heal what's been broken in these hostile pandemic years? I walk home pondering how unlettered women learned which bitterness would soothe, how they came to trust that for every harm, the earth itself could answer. And finally, a beginning. I'm imagining several yards of linen, the color of blackberry juice. Want to wrap myself in softness, long to make a dress for the winter to come. Let me prick my fingers with pins. Let me remember blackberry blood that stains my lips when I steal from wild brambles I pass as I walk. The folds of this cloth will hold shadows, burgundies poured in remembrance, but also cerise that beats in eyelids on a day of sun. Great-great-grandmother wove rustic linen from thread she'd spun, its flax fibers having grown nearby on a Burton farm. She saved a swatch I've tucked away, an heirloom that came to me in this year when death still feels ever present. Let me fashion a garment that pulses with reds, a reminder that life pours through my veins, sweet and sharp and as brimful of light as ripe berries. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. That was lovely. Now we're going to do the presentation for the 2022 Heroes of Conservation. Each hero will be introduced by a special presenter, and we'll introduce both of those. So Dan Best is first. Dan is going to be introduced by his old friend, I think you're friends, Jim Lewis. You all in the audience may have known Jim as a longtime radio host for WKSU Radio. So we're honored that he was able to come today to present to Dan, and we'll let him speak. He's got a few little high-tech things here to plug in.
I'm going to stand by the big boy stand here. Forgive the crutch. I'm trying to. I keep reminding myself everything in life that you don't like is temporary. If you don't believe that, talk to Chuck Walter. It's really good to be here. And we're going to hear a little 2-minute episode of a Beyond the Backyard, which Dan starred and made me famous. That's coming up. But we were on the radio together for several years, and it was great fun. And it started on a dare. But first I have to ask you, how do we measure the value of a career, of a life? Well, there could be longevity, and certainly Dan Best has that. 33 years at the Geauga Park District, most of that as chief naturalist. 8 years before that at the Shaker Lakes Nature Center, and all the countless field trips that he gave and is still giving. So there's that. There's also recognition. Jan checks that box too. Look at the National Association of Interpretation, the Great Lakes Regional Award in '08. That same year, the Master Interpreter Award of '08, a national award. He's got that. What he may not know is that he also won a PRINDY, a Public Radio News Directors Award, an AP Award, and the highest award of all in public broadcasting or commercial broadcasting, an Edward R. Murrow Award for Beyond the Backyard. So he's got that. And there's also accomplishment. Look at what he did at Observatory Park, starting the Westwoods Nature Center. And of course, his beloved prothonotary warblers at Eldon Russell Park. All of this and so much more. Beyond the Backyard, which we'll sample in just seconds. He's got accomplishments. So we've got accomplishment, recognition, longevity. But I'm telling you, none of those is the reason why you're here today, why Dan is so admired by so many. I'll give you a clue as to what the answer really is. I've introduced many, many, many famous musicians in my life and my career. And I usually do a little homework just to make sure I was on top of things. And you'd find out how many Grammys they'd won, how many CMA awards, how many Folk Alliance awards, how many whatevers. And I also learned that even if they had a million-selling record and a Grammy award, that is not why people were in the audience and bought a ticket. It's not why you're here. The real reason that someone has value is the impact that they make on you personally. I can't tell you how many times somebody said, the reason that song makes a difference to me is because suddenly I recognized my own life in that song. Either the notes chosen or the words. And certainly we heard some fine words from our poet tonight. So if you're on a field trip with Dan Best, and let's say you're identifying twigs in the winter condition, the surest way to know a tree. Dan will walk you through alternate and opposite and leaf margins and all of that, and you'll find out what that tree is the first time. The next one's on you. And while you're doing it, let's say a bird flies overhead, and Dan's going to know right away what it is by the song or the call, and he'll tell you, but he's not going to tell you the next one. Because what he's hoping is that he's whet your appetite to go figure it out for yourself. And that's the value of a guy like Dan Best. And he's rare. So what happened in 1997, 98 that brought him to the airwaves of WKSU in 22 counties in northern Ohio? It was a dare from Paige Hosier. I don't know if Paige is here.
Yeah.
There you are. You remember this. I didn't want to just play records on the radio, which I did, if you remember what those are. But I also snuck in little events like what each park district in the 22 counties was up to, or what the wildflowers of the week were, or the cross-country ski wax of the day. So somebody said, you know, you can get that underwritten. And that's a public radio term for commercial, without the sell. Okay. So we had this big powwow with our development person and Paige and me, and we were going to figure out if this could work. And Paige said, we'll do it, but we want Dan Best on the air. So we didn't know if that was something we could do or not. Keep in mind, this was going to be 45 seconds probably, not the 5 to 10 minute event that Dan and I usually came up with. But somehow we got it through. And as a result, we were suddenly broadcasting to so many people, you know, what was just not in, but just beyond your backyard. And how many wonderful things we were able to discover, whether it was a wood frog or whether it was a cricket or a snow flea, you might remember. But it was great fun to do those things, and it turned out that even though the episodes averaged around 4 or 5 minutes, it took 20 hours to do, because we had to come up with an idea, and then we had to fashion it into a script, and then record it, and take it back to the studio and add music and sound effects, and it was quite an ordeal. So rather than try to explain it to you, how'd you like to hear Dan Best at work back when he was a young man? I picked one of the real short ones because I know there's a lot going on here, but you'll get a feel for it.